Hello, I'm Esme Murphy with WCCO TV, and in this edition of Talking Points, we're talking about your money during the second Trump presidency. Our expert is Pete Najarian. You've seen him on CNBC along with his brother John. He is also the co-founder of MarketRebellion.com. And Minnesota sports fans, of course, are going to recognize this former Gopher and NFL football player from his playing days and his sports analysis. And we want to thank Pete Najarian for coming in.
It's great to be with you.
All right. We need you to help us decipher what is going on with the markets in the Trump administration. Actually, you could do several days on that.
Oh, yes, maybe longer.
All right. Let me just ask you, why was it that the markets went through the roof the day after President Trump won the election?
I think that they honestly felt like that the options markets, the stock markets, the futures markets, all of which now are going to have much more of an open feel. And because of that, I think a lot of people got really excited. Maybe a little overexcited to some degree, because there's only so much, a presidency and all that can do. But it's a very market-friendly presidency, and so I think that was the read-through. And clearly, we've watched this market just absolutely rip to the upside, and it almost feels like new highs almost every single day.
Right, something to watch. Mm-hmm. Trump loves stock market success. He loves to point to the stock market and say, see how well I'm doing. I mean, should people be investing right now?
I think so, absolutely. I don't know that there's ever a time not to be investing, to be honest with you. It's just a matter of where, right? Yeah. I mean, because we go through these fits and starts. That sometimes it's led by technology, sometimes it's the financials, sometimes it's energy. So there's always a leadership within the market, and I think that people have to understand that as well. I mean, it's not always perfect timing to buy tech, for instance, or semiconductor stocks, or anything related to AI. Exactly right. But there are better times to do that, and better times when this rotation is happening. And I think the one thing about this market that I will say since the president was elected was that we have had a really good transformation almost on a weekly basis of it's the financials leading. Well, after that, then it was energy leading. And then after that, it was just commodities themselves. And so that's a healthy market. You don't want just one thing going to the upside and everything else going down, which we did see a little bit of that. Technology was just the absolute leader for a while. I think a healthier market is to have that transition and different leadership going into the market on a consistent basis.
I get obviously the president supports deregulation. He's supporting tax breaks for businesses. I can see how he is a pro-business guy. Sure. There's no two ways about it. But one thing that markets seem to really not like is uncertainty.
Yes.
And the president, whatever you think of him, if you're a big fan, not so much a fan, he has been predictably unpredictable once again in the first few weeks of his administration. Yeah. How does that play? I mean, should that make people nervous about going long-term into certain things?
It's a really good question. I think you're 100% right on your statement, though, about uncertainty. I don't know that it's so uncertain with the president. He told us going in, I'm going to slap tariffs on if they don't do this, this, and this, right? I mean, so that was part of the monologue that he was giving us in terms of what the markets were going to look like. And I think that part was very honest, and we've had a really interesting week this past week. We had an interesting week the week before because of DeepSeek and this whole thing about AI, and then all of a sudden this week it's all been about tariffs, and that's the news story really that's dominating almost every day in the market. But I think the better part is to look through the market a little bit past that and say, you know what, it's not just tariffs. We still have earnings season going on. And some of these earnings have been absolutely blowout, incredible earnings. And we've seen a lot of that since we started this most recent quarter of earnings. And boy, I'll tell you what, the financials absolutely crushed it in every way. I mean, whether it was Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or Bank of America or Citigroup or any of those, and those were an area that we targeted and said, you know what, if President Trump becomes the president, that's going to be an area that's going to really be very thankful that he's there, and that's the financials.
Okay. In terms of an investment portfolio, for somebody who's a small investor or maybe just the 401k, what is some of your advice? You want to be diversified to some degree. You don't want all your money into one spot because, as I was saying, when you've got a healthy market, it's moving around, it's shifting around a little bit, and it's not just got one leadership role. So the diversify rule is still true?
It's still true. It absolutely is true. I live by that myself. I am very diverse. If you saw my portfolio, you'd say, well, wait a minute, Pete, you're over here on this and you're over here on that. And the answer is yes. I have some exposure into semiconductors, into technology, into the financials. So I don't just say it. That's where I put myself, and technology. Quite honestly, quite a lot in different parts of technology that I think have moved, but have a lot more room still to the upside.
All right. For most of us, our biggest investment is our home.
Yes.
And some people are fortunate enough to even invest in perhaps a second home, maybe a dream home in Florida, where I know that you've had your experiences. What about real estate with the high interest rates and just the craziness with obviously all these environmental implications of climate change? I know some people disagree with that, but I think it's hard to dispute it these days.
I think it's difficult to dispute that. Yeah, I would say this: when it comes to real estate right now, we're still looking at levels of what we're looking at from the percentage of what you need to borrow. These levels are still high. And it's going to take a little while for them to come down. Now, is that something that we've heard President Trump talk about, talking to the Fed, wanting rate cuts and all the rest of that? And we'll see exactly where that goes. And he has kind of backed off of late on that whole thing. He's actually given the Fed some credit just this past week, talking about, it probably wasn't the right time to cut. But we will see some cuts, I think, this year. And I'm not one of those rate cuts. Yeah. And with that, oftentimes you'll take a look and see what's happening in the home world. And all of a sudden, rather than being somewhere very close to a 7% mortgage, I think that'll start to come down a little bit. So unless you're in some huge rush to move somewhere, maybe the job changed or whatever, I don't think it's a great time necessarily right now to be buying houses. But here's the other side of that coin. You could still buy the house. You could still have that mortgage rate. And you can always refinance. And I think sometimes people forget that. It's not the biggest thing in the world in terms of money and everything else. So I think that if you found the dream home that you're out there looking for, just know that you can always refinance it.
Is it better to be able to buy a home in Minnesota where we all live, or is it compared to other states like California, like Florida, where obviously there are a lot of problems?
A lot of problems, inflated numbers as well. When you look at some of the numbers of what people are looking for houses that are smaller or whatever, sure, I think you're right. I think there are certainly parts of California. It used to be more in the northern side of things. Now it's more so in the southern part. But that whole state has had so many different things thrown at it. It's just amazing. And these fires were about as awful as you could ever imagine. I have many friends out there who had spectacular homes near the water that no longer exist. I mean literally, like my house in Florida, which obviously you've got to deal with hurricanes.
Which you lost a home in the hurricane. So
I did, unfortunately. Yeah, that was pretty brutal. It's been brutal psychologically with my wife, and financially and psychologically with me. I mean, we put in a lot of money and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that, and it literally is gone. I mean, there's just sand there. But
so sorry.
Yeah, but that's like you said. Climate change, there is some of that. I think there are people who are totally against that whole word, and they don't think that isn't really affecting us. I think to some degree it is, but time will tell. But we're seeing more and more hurricanes. I can tell you that.
All right, I want to ask you quickly about cryptocurrency, because people are talking about it. It's a buzz. The president has his coin. The first lady has her own coin. There's obviously Bitcoin. What should people think about this? I mean, is this just sort of way out of hand in terms of the volatility for the average person?
I would say the answer is yes. For the average person, it is, and it is volatile. I mean, just to give you a good example of the biggest and baddest of them all, Bitcoin. Bitcoin was $65,000 at the time of the election, and when President Trump got elected, all of a sudden, here we are over 100,000. Right. Pretty consistent basis. It's been choppy of late. It's been somewhere between, call it 98,000 and about 107,000. Big numbers, though. I mean, even when it pulls back to 98,000, when you think about the fact that it's up that significantly higher from where it was going into the election, I think that's a statement about the president and his feelings about cryptocurrencies. And it's something that when you looked over at Gensler and some of those folks, they weren't very embracing of this whole thing. President Trump seems to be very embracing of this, along with Elon Musk. And it's something that it's been amazing to watch how crypto has absolutely really been a part of what we talk about now more and more and more every single day, and the miners and all the other little aspects that go into the whole crypto world.
Okay, well, Pete Najarian, thank you so much for stopping by. You can see him on marketrebellion.com. It's on YouTube. You've got your own YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. That does it for this edition of Talking Points. Please email me with comments and suggestions at esme@cbs.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.